So here's the rub. The remote bleeder is in there, and I've got the new slave cylinder line, but remember this thing don't line up perfectly with that hole up there. So I've basically got to play with this and get this lined up as I'm putting the torque tube in there. So this is kind of difficult to film, let alone do. So I'm probably gonna pick up the video after I get the rear bolts in and the torque tube in. I'm just gonna have to fiddle and fiddle and fiddle. I don't know what it is about sprinklers in the morning. That always makes me feel good, like the day's getting started right or something. So today, Saturday morning, another early Saturday morning. I am going to get this thing to start here in just a few minutes. I'm going to run the oil lines for the turbos and throw the shifter in real quick. Then I'm going to start it just to make sure what I've done so far actually works. Then I'm going to throw the harmonic balancer in there, and that's probably all I'm going to have time for today. So let's get started. So here's the lines for the turbo that I was talking about. Gotta get them routed back through the tunnel. Before I can start the car. I guess I could find some way to plug it, but I'd rather just go ahead and route them back through. Something that's got to get done anyway. And I've had a little rubber plug in there for the whole time. And what I did, so I didn't forget which was which, it's not hard to figure out, but I went ahead and marked them supply, and then the other one would be the return. But it's got to go down through the tunnel and then get routed back up through the cradle. I'm going to leave the exhaust off because that's not going to hurt anything. It'll just be obnoxiously loud when I start it. I just want to start it for a few minutes, make sure that the clutch engages and disengages, and then I'll keep trucking from there. But that's like on my mind to make sure that that's actually working right now. So. Here's a quick tour of everything connected back. So, got the oil drains connected, oil supply connected, and it routes over here. Goes around the exhaust back there, hugs this as best I can. I've got it supported there, and then it goes down through there. The lines that came with my kit are actually a little bit too long, so I had to loop them like this. But what I did is kind of like a heat sink, is the oil supply line is actually tied to the torque tube, and it's actually resting up along the torque tube. The reason I'm doing that is because aluminum is an incredible heat dissipator. Not only is it lightweight and stiff, but it's also really great at dissipating heat. Any kind of electronics, if you take apart like a power supply, you'll see aluminum heat sinks all over the place on the little components that get hot. And if you'll notice, this is the actual transmission cooler line, and that's where they chose to bolt it. They chose to bolt it directly to the torque tube. There's absolutely no fluid, nothing in it. There's just a hollow aluminum tube. So it keeps it away from all of these lines over here, because this is going to be running at 220 degrees whenever it gets good and hot, and this torque tube will help act as a heat sink. Now this is actually the return line, and I have it routed just a hair differently. It actually clears the exhaust and stuff just fine, but it's secured there, and secured up there. But this is actually a little bit cooler, maybe not significantly cooler, but it should be a little bit cooler, just because it's out in the open air and it's been cycled through all of this open air, so it should be just a little bit cooler. Because anytime I'm moving, these are actually getting blasted with cool air, because cool air actually kind of comes this way like that. The reason I know that is because I get all kinds of dirt and smudge and stuff right up there on the back of the car, because air is always going like this. So hopefully that will suffice. So I've got all of those oil lines plumbed back in place. It took a little while. There's zip ties everywhere, but you know, it works. It's worked for a year before this, so I expect it'll last another year or two, or however long it takes until I have to pull this apart again to do something else. So I am just about to the point where I can start it. I've got to check a few other things. Probably throw the shifter in real quick, and then I'll be ready to start it.